Let me read a verse for you out of the Bible. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 9 through 11. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders. Lying wonders. Folks, we're going to talk about a very important topic in today's show. We're going to talk about some lying wonders. We're going to talk about UFOs. Friend, do you believe in UFOs? I believe in UFOs. Question is, what is a UFO? We're going to discuss that in today's show. Let me read verse 10. And with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie. I believe there's some lies being preached and taught today. I believe there's some deception out there. I believe people are being deceived. And I think it's time we got educated. And the world is going crazy right now over this UFO stuff. Well, we're going to deal with that in today's show. Welcome, everybody. I'm your host on this edition of Prophecy in the Spotlight, Brother Dan Goodwin. Sitting with me is Dr. Chales Hiltibidal. And, Doc, I don't know when we've ever done a more serious show than we're going to do today.
I agree.
We're going to talk about what I call UFOs, true or false. UFOs, true or false.
Depends on what your definition is.
My new book, The Great End Time Distraction, Rex will put that up. Brand new, going to shake the prophecy world, that book. Going to literally shake the prophecy world with the Nephilim and the giants and UFOs and all this, the fallen angel stuff, Genesis 6, all this crazy stuff that's been going on. But the end of the journey for the Nephilim crowd is the UFOs.
Yes.
It starts with the Luciferian flood millions of years ago.
The supposed gap.
Yeah, the gap theory and the Luciferian flood and the millions of years, people created with no souls, all kinds of crazy stuff. And but it doesn't end there. It goes to Genesis 6 and angels supposedly having children with human women. If you can figure that out, how a spirit being with no flesh, no blood, can create a baby in the womb of a human woman is scientifically, biblically impossible. But that's where it goes. But that's not the end of that journey. No. I mean, then they talk about the flood. God kills them all in the flood, but he missed one. Somebody on the ark, guess who? Ham's wife, they suppose. Ham's wife was infected, so it starts all over again, and we have Nephilim again.
God made a mistake.
Yeah, and but that's not the end of the journey either.
No.
The end of the journey is the UFOs in the end time. We got
the return of the Nephilim and the UFO.
And I guess they can't travel as spirit beings anymore. They got to get in a vehicle and fly like a Hollywood movie. That's all it is. So we're going to start at the end of the journey. This is our first show on the brand new book, first of many shows that you and I are going to do about Genesis 6, the controversy, and the Nephilim and the giants, and we're going to talk about angels, a whole bunch of stuff we're going to help people with. But the end of the journey of the Nephilim crowd is this UFO thing. Yeah. And isn't it interesting that it's all in the news now? And everybody's talking about UFOs and footage from Air Force.
The government's going to release all of this information.
And so the government is starting to promote it now.
Yeah.
Where they were hiding it. Why were they hiding it, but now they're going to let it out? Because it serves their purpose.
Yes.
And by the way, I do not believe they were hiding Martians from other planets or fallen angels. I believe they were hiding, and we'll get to this at the end of the show, I believe they were hiding military test aircraft and military devices. That's what people are seeing in the sky. Nobody wants to admit it.
Yeah.
One guy come on and said, we've seen a lot of these, and they always happen to be near an Air Force base or an Army base. Duh, what do you suppose that's all about? Because that's where it's coming from. It's our military testing stuff.
Whether it's something physical or slight raise or something.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's so simple to me. But in the show today, we're going to talk about the history of UFOs. We're going to talk about Area 51. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about Roswell. Now, we don't have a lot of time. I'll have to go kind of quick on this. But we're going to end with some things about the Manhattan Project. Now, folks, I'm not talking about a high-rise in New York City or Chicago. I'm talking about a government atomic bomb secret mission to build an atomic bomb in 1940 something. I think the idea started in 39, but somewhere around 42 it actually was happening. And the Manhattan Project is a secret operative to build the atomic bomb to beat Germany in the building of this thing. And I'll read some very interesting things from an article about that. But this is what I have in my hand is the actual chapter in my book called UFOs, True or False. Let me just read the first paragraph in this chapter. In recent years, the Nephilim teachers have expanded into the UFO hype. Some out of zeal to gain followers through sensationalism, but others truly have fallen for this sci-fi, non-biblical rhetoric, as I call it. And then below is the definition of a UFO, and I have an acrostic here with UFO. What is a UFO? And that's why I said at the beginning of the show, do you believe in UFOs? I believe in them. The problem is we got to define what a UFO is.
That's it.
So most people, a UFO is a flying saucer with a little green man in it, or a Martian, or now a fallen angel or something. That's what a UFO is to most people now. That's not what a UFO is. Let me give you the scientific definition of a UFO. You already know this.
It's real astounding.
It's deep. This is so deep.
Very, very deep, man.
A UFO stands for unidentified flying object. Boy, that's deep, right? Unidentified flying object. See if you can see it on there. And I got a picture of a flying saucer there, but there it is. Unidentified flying object. Right out of the book. So when somebody says a UFO was sighted, it doesn't mean it was Martians or little green men or fallen angels. What it means is something was seen that's unidentified. We don't know what it was. It was flying, and it's some sort of object.
Yeah.
Now today, I think some of it's light, and you got a little bit to say about the light.
I'm convinced a lot of it is the use of light.
Now you were saying that they have engineered different things with light. Explain some of that.
Yeah. Well, I believe it was Singapore the other day. I saw the picture up in the sky was a QR code. And the QR code was put into the sky. I mean, every digit, every dot in its place, all done with light rays. And you could take your phone and put it on that QR code, and it'd take you to the advertisement.
It would take you to an ad on
just
the
like
internet.
you did it on the paper.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's amazing. Now look what technology can do.
Oh, it's amazing.
And I think you were also telling me the other day that they have the technology to put on the screen in that Air Force aircraft, the pilot, he could see something on the screen that's not there that somebody else put there. And he would never know the difference.
It's amazing. Absolutely. Well, even the technology to be able to make anything up that you cannot detect that it's been altered. Technology is amazing.
Well, let me give a little history. Now, this is from history.com. Anybody can go online and look this stuff up. A little history of UFOs was quite surprising to me. This doesn't go as far back as people think it does. Now, I'm sure people have always seen things hundreds of years ago they couldn't explain. But really, the history of what we call UFOs today, it doesn't go back that far. It goes back to about 1947. That's not that far ago. I mean, 70 years ago. The first well-known UFO sighting occurred in 1947 when businessman Kenneth Arnold claimed to see a group of 9 high-speed objects near Mount Rainier in Washington while flying his small plane. Arnold estimated the speed of the crescent-shaped objects as several thousand miles per hour. Now, how can you even guess at something like that?
Well, it's fast.
Yeah. He said that they moved like saucers. Now, don't miss this. They moved like saucers skipping on water. Now, listen to this. In the newspaper report that followed, it was mistakenly stated that the objects were saucer-shaped, hence the term flying saucer. But he never said they looked like flying saucers. And so, but that term came. Now, I don't know who come up with it first, Hollywood or this guy or this article, but
it developed.
flying saucers became a Hollywood theme for sci-fi movies.
Still is.
And where did it come from? A mistake in the description of what this guy saw. He never said that they were flying saucers, but the term came out of that. And of course, the hype and excitement. Now let's go to another. The Roswell UFO incident, the same year that Arnold saw these flying objects, a rancher named W.W. Mac Brazel came across a mysterious 200-yard long wreckage near an Army airfield, of course, in Roswell, New Mexico. So here's Roswell. Roswell, all the UFO movies on TV will have Roswell in there somewhere. Roswell, New Mexico. Local papers reported it was the remains of a, guess what? A flying saucer. Where'd that come from? It came from the other guy's mistaken description. That somebody picked up the wrong description. And so they're calling this a flying saucer in Roswell.
And nobody saw it except the remains.
The U.S. military issued a statement saying that it was just a weather balloon, though the newspaper photographs suggested otherwise. And by the way, I don't think we should listen necessarily to our military. They're not going to tell us the truth. No. They've never told us the truth.
Not if they're working on a secret project.
Yeah, they're working on, remember the flying wing that came out a few years ago? The only reason we know about that is they don't care anymore. They got something better.
They got something better.
The flying wing could fly under radar. It was a really amazing thing. But they let people know about it because it's ancient now.
Yep.
There's something way beyond that.
It's obsolete.
The flames of conspiracy were further fanned in the 50s when dummies, now this is interesting, dummies with latex skin and aluminum bones that looked eerily like aliens fell from the sky across New Mexico and were hurriedly picked up by military vehicles. Well, these are Martians. We got to hurry up and hide them from the masses of people. No, it was part of an experiment that they were doing. They're not going to tell us what it was about. They were testing something with these fake mannequins or whatever with aluminum on them, obviously. And they wanted to get them. They didn't want it in the news. They didn't want people to know what they were testing here. But what I got a kick out of here is they looked eerily like aliens. Well, what did they mean by that?
Who knows?
What were they comparing it to? A Hollywood movie, probably.
Yep.
You know, so. They looked like aliens. In other words, they looked like something I saw on television in a Hollywood sci-fi movie. Okay, yeah. They fell from the sky, were hurriedly picked up. To those who believed in the earlier Roswell sightings, this seemed like a government cover-up. For the Air Force, these dummy drops were a way to test. Here's what the Air Force said. These were a way to test new ways for pilots to survive falls from an airplane. 50 years later, the military issued a subsequent statement admitting that the Roswell wreckage was part of Project Mogul, a top-secret atomic espionage project, whatever that is. So what I want people to get out of this is that you can't trust the government.
No.
And a lot of this stuff is happening near these bases. We're going to talk about Area 51 in a minute. Stuff happens at them. Why? Because they're doing stuff there.
They're experimenting
stuff. They're experimenting.
They're trying to stay ahead of our enemies.
Yep. All right. Well, that brings us to Area 51. Area 51 in the 1950s and 60s. So we went from Roswell. Now we're to Area 51. Area 51, in the 50s and 60s, multiple UFO sightings were reported around Area 51 in Nevada. It's in Nevada. And you can't walk in there. They'll shoot you or they'll arrest you. You don't just walk into this place. A site used by the CIA, U.S. Air Force, Lockheed Martin to test flights of experimental aircraft or black aircraft. We could stop the show right here. They're telling us what's going on here. Declassified documents show Area 51 was home to a Cold War program called Oxcart, dedicated to creating a spy plane that would be undetectable. Now, that's probably that flying wing that we know about now. In the air, it could be used to gather information behind the Iron Curtain. The resulting SR-71 Blackbird, F-117 Nighthawk, the Archangel 12, or the A-12, traveled at speeds upwards of 2,000 miles per hour. Hey, didn't somebody mention?
Yeah,
It looked like he was going 2,000 miles. You reckon it might have been some of this stuff? Wouldn't take very long to get from Nevada to Washington, 2,000 miles an hour.
No.
My goodness. These mysterious planes help fuel rumors that Area 51 was used to conduct experiments on extraterrestrial life and their spacecraft. And you can see pictures of these things in books. Mm-hmm. They got pictures of what they think's an alien, and he's been dissected. And I don't believe a bit of it. I don't believe a bit of it.
No.
Now, I'll give a little explanation here about what I just read. And I realize the above discourse on UFOs is not as exciting as the Nephilim crowd is putting it out there. But I want you to notice some things in the story I just read you. I want to give you a few things to consider. Number one, notice the term flying saucer was a mistake. Number two, the wreckage was located near a military base with an airstrip. Obviously, it's military using that, and that was a military craft. Why do these UFOs and these Martians always land near a military base?
Well, Area 51's a military base.
What a coincidence, huh? That these Martians always crash near one of them bases. No, it's our stuff. It's our military stuff. It's what I've been telling people for years. If something really is flying... If
it really is...
It's something that somebody's... It could be Israel, it could be Russia, or it could be us. Most likely it's us. There's stuff off the coast right now. They don't know what it is. At least they tell us they don't. I guarantee it's
somebody
our military.
Knows.
It's our military stuff. Could be Israel's too. Don't put anything past them. Number three, looked like aliens, they claimed, in the 50s. Wait, I said, what did an alien look like in the 50s since nobody had ever seen an alien? Yeah. Oh, wait. Hollywood had already done sci-fi movies about Martians from outer space. That must be what was meant here. And Hollywood, no doubt, coined the term flying saucers as well, or helped promote it. Number four, most UFO sightings are nothing more than things... Now listen to this now. Most UFO sightings are nothing more than things blowing in the wind, reflections of light, optical illusions. Number five, it is worth considering that some of the more serious UFO sightings are, in fact, secret military experimental aircraft.
Sure.
No doubt about this. I know the military and government agencies have denied having anything in the sky when these are recorded UFO sightings happen, and we believe our government, right?
Oh, yes.
After all, they would not lie to us. I'm reading right out of the book here. The following section, I'll prove to you once and for all that our government has been keeping secrets from the American people for decades.
Yes.
And I give here the history of war, and this is real important. The history of the war is what this is all about. All these things going on in Area 51, Roswell, all that. This is military testing grounds. They're producing. Somebody created that flying wing. It was done secretly. Nobody knew about it until a few years ago.
Well, look at the process and the progress that we made, not only with technology, but in metallurgy, and how they've been able to develop the different levels of aluminum and different levels of all of metals. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Who are we going to, and we say they don't tell us the truth or they lie to us, and I realize they don't want to give their secrets away that they're working on, but it's, as you say,
and
we're in a contest with Russia and China.
Look where it's led to, though.
Yeah.
I mean, they're spying on Congress.
Yeah.
They spied on the president's lawyer during an impeachment.
But
that's against the law.
But they have all those abilities, and so as you're already pointing out, these unidentified objects, if you could, I'm sure they could be identified in some way.
Yeah. One thing we know they're not from Mars.
And
they're not aliens from another planet.
They're not from other planets.
I don't believe there are any.
No.
And I'll tell you what else they're not. They're not fallen angels flying around in a spaceship.
Bible believers should not fall for that.
Yeah.
Bible believers ought to realize God made this world and only this world habitable.
Yeah. Now, will this be used by Satan to answer the rapture.
I'm convinced that this is the major thing. They're going to. You read the verse a while ago about the deception that's going to fall on the world. The verses you read are the following after the rapture of the saints, and a delusion is going to fall on the world. There'll be no restraint because the Holy Spirit that's indwelt in every believer will be removed. There'll be nothing to keep that delusion from sweeping, and you can already see how it has already swept the greater majority of the people into believing it.
Yeah,
Even
and
preachers
it's so
like
much
us that shouldn't miss it.
And it's so exciting to people. It draws them away from the Word of God.
And it builds crowds and builds enthusiasm. Yeah. And by the way, it'll sell more. It'll sell more books than yours.
And we're a generation that's grown up with Star Wars, and
we've been prepared for ever since you said it a while ago, 1947. 1947 is the same time Israel is coming back into existence, as God was setting the stage for the end time events by bringing Israel back into their land. The same time the devil has started his program of preparing a deception to offset it.
Now, I give in here the history of war, and I'm not going to get into it all, but war broke out as soon as Adam took the first bite of the forbidden fruit. And the first deadly weapon was a simple rock, possibly in the hand of Cain, or maybe his own fist, we don't know, or stick. But we've been at war ever since.
And they weren't kids in the field.
No.
They were men.
They were grown men. And Cain killed his brother. It doesn't say how he did it, but he did with maybe a rock or a stick.
Shed his blood anyway.
Maybe his fist. Who knows what he did. And wars and rumors of wars, a study of history is a study of war. And we began with a war against God in the garden. We'll end with the final war against Christ at Armageddon. We're going to. Somebody said, here's a Prussian proverb. I like this. In case of rain, the war will be held in the auditorium. Rain or shine, we will have
it.
War.
Yeah. And the very final war is, as you say, at the end of the millennial reign, and that's when the final war against God is going to take place.
I got the history of war for 5,000 years, very little change. We're still using sticks and clubs and fists, and until gunpowder is invented in 1000 AD, that begins to change things. Now they're going to be able to, instead of throwing a rock, you're going to be able to propel it with gunpowder.
Yep.
Eventually the muskets invented there in the 1600s here, or actually the 1800s it says here. In the early 1900s, things really started to take off. A submarine called the U-boat came along from Germany. Machine guns came along. After 5,900 years of human history, warfare had evolved from a primitive swords and spears to firing projectiles from airplanes and submersible boats. But the world had seen nothing yet. Man was just getting started in his quest to wage war and annihilate cities and kingdoms and his fellow man. And the next comes the nuclear age. And I'm not going to read all this, but June 7th, 1942, a physicist named Robert Oppenheimer, a Jew, was appointed director of the highly secretive Manhattan Project. There's more to this, but I don't have time to give it. It's in the book. I give a little more history of what happened here. Einstein's involved as well, and he's a Jew. They're going to build the first atom bomb to stay ahead of Germany.
Well, it's interesting. World War I was ended because Jewish scientists managed to weaponize maize for the gunpowder and the building of weapons that ended World War I. And Jewish scientists, with the atom bomb, ended. And as a result, God honored it in two phases of Ezekiel 37. It's amazing.
Now, let me just read a few excerpts from the Manhattan Project. This is from ushistory.org. Early in 1939, the world scientific community discovered that German physicists had learned the secrets of splitting the atom. Fears soon spread. To make a long story short, Einstein and Oppenheimer talked Franklin Roosevelt into, we better do this before they do. And so they set up what's called the Manhattan Project. It's all in this article here. I'm just picking out a few things. The nuclear facilities were built at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, Hanford, Washington. The main assembly plant was out in New Mexico, out there where all this stuff happens. New Mexico, Robert Oppenheimer was put in charge of putting the pieces together at Los Alamos. After the final bill was tallied, nearly $2 billion had been spent on research and development of the atomic bomb. The Manhattan Project employed over 120,000 Americans. Secrecy was paramount. Neither the Germans nor the Japanese could learn of the project. Roosevelt and Churchill agreed that Stalin would be kept in the dark. He's the Russian. Mm-hmm. There was no public awareness or debate. Keeping 120,000 people quiet would be impossible. Therefore, only a small privileged amount of people, inner scientists and officials, knew about the atomic bomb. Even the 120,000 working there,
they didn't know what they were working on.
No. In fact, Vice President Truman had never heard of the Manhattan Project until he became President Truman. That's talk about secrecy. Talk about keeping things from the American people. Now, I'm at the end right here. Just a couple more things. There's Russian collusion here, real Russian collusion. A Russian spy, a Soviet spy named Klaus Fuchs or something like that, had penetrated the inner circle. By the summer of 1945, Oppenheimer was ready to test the first bomb. July 16, 1945, at Trinity site near Alamogordo, New Mexico, scientists and the Manhattan Project readied themselves to watch the detonation of the world's first atomic bomb. The device was affixed to a 100-foot tower and discharged just before dawn. Nobody was properly prepared for what was about to happen. They had no idea. The blinding flash, visible for 200 miles, lit up the morning sky. A mushroom cloud reached 40,000 feet. That's higher than the planes fly. Blowing out windows of civilian homes up to 100 miles away. 100 miles away, windows were broken. Yep. When the cloud returned to Earth, it created a half-mile wide crater, forcing sand into glass. A bogus cover-up story. Here we go, cover-up. Mm-hmm. A bogus story was quickly released explaining that a huge ammunition dump had just exploded in the desert. Soon word reached President Truman in Germany that the project was successful. The world had entered the nuclear age.
Yes, indeed.
My point is, it was hidden from the American people. It was even hidden from Congress, from the Supreme Court. It was hidden from the Vice President. They did this whole operation, spent $2 billion, and nobody even knew what was going on. Now, do you think they're lying to us today?
We're supposed to trust them today.
Yeah. In 1952, just 7 years later, the hydrogen bomb is introduced. 1,000 times more powerful.
And who knows what we now have.
What do we got? 70 years later, what do we got?
Yeah.
Well, folks, we're at the end of the show. I'm trying to get you to see that we're being lied to again.
Absolutely.
And most of this UFO stuff is simply military stuff. But we're out of time. I hope you know the Lord. I hope you're ready to make Jesus. If you need any help with that, you contact us. You need to be born again. All right, well, until that time, keep your eyes on the skies.